Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, giving you the edge you need to get into the colleges of your dreams. With your host, Steve Schwartz. That's me.
Welcome to College Admissions Toolbox, Rob. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for being on the show. Now, you've got a really impressive background. You've got a BA from Columbia, a Ph.D. from Harvard, and now you do test prep tutoring. You do SAT, ACT. You've got a blog, a lot of stuff going on.
I'm really passionate about teaching, and I live in New York City with my wife, and I do SAT, ACT tutoring here in New York, and online as well. And then I publish the blog, which I'm really passionate about.
Very cool, very cool. How did you get into this? Was there a pivotal moment that brought you to where you are today?
Sure. So I was teaching a lot in graduate school as part of my Ph.D., and I really fell in love with the teaching. I had more fun teaching than doing anything else I've done before. I didn't want to stay in academia and do academic research. I just really wanted to be teaching all the time. And, I started learning about test prep, and I really liked the standardized tests, oddly enough. And so it was kind of a natural segue from there into teaching test prep.
What is it about these exams that really piques your interest and your curiosity and makes you want to go deeper into that?
I think just the fact that no matter how good you are, math or English, they always find a way to challenge you. There's always going to be tough problems. And it's just a lot of fun. At first, most students think, I have to study for this test. This is going to be a big pain. It's difficult. I don't want to do this. But then once they start studying, they find out how fun it can be. And I think the fact that there's just always really new and challenging questions makes it continually enjoyable. You're kind of never finished with these tests.
That's a great mindset to have. A mindset really makes it easier to actually buckle down and get into it. It's a great, really positive approach that I really like and think will really work well for students, even if it's not always easy to apply at times. What was your own test prep experience like back when you were studying for these exams?
So I took the tests a number of times, actually. I started working on my own, I think, freshman year in high school. I took the ACT. I had taken the ACT in 7th grade as part of a testing program in my state. And, I always did pretty well on the tests, but I didn't do great on the SAT at first. So I really did a lot of prep work. And it wasn't until, I think, junior year in high school that I started working with the actual official SAT study guides, the Blue Book, as it's known, that my scores really started to improve at that point. But it was a lot of work. I took the tests a couple of times. I did a lot of prep. And then I think I got my highest score fall of senior year after I had been working through that official guide.
Oh, wow. So working with those actual test questions is so key. You said, obviously, you took the test multiple times, got your highest score right before you were applying, I gather. So what were the steps that really led to your score increases?
So I think it was really learning from the tests that I was taking. I did a lot. I went through all the 10 tests. Back then, I think it was called the Real SAT book, and we both used that book. And so I worked through all the tests, and I really learned from my mistakes in each of the tests. And I also did a lot of vocab. So I said, okay, I'm going to learn every vocab word I can. Not that students need to do that to do well on the SAT, but it definitely helps. So I think I made flashcards for 2,000-3,000 words.
Wow.
But it really paid off because then I knew a lot of those words in college, and I still know a lot of those words. So I think for students doing vocab for the SAT, vocab is a good investment that's going to help beyond the test. So I think working on vocab for the SAT is important. It's often overlooked. It's not everyone's favorite thing to do, but I think doing it really is valuable, and it's an opportunity to gain something that you're going to take with you far beyond the test.
No, I don't doubt there's tons of value in learning all that vocab. At the same time, though, you're in high school, you got a million things going on, and the idea of learning, 2,000 or 3,000 words can seem like pretty intimidating. And obviously, I'm sure you don't have to learn all of those. There's probably just that handful that come up more often, like a couple hundred maybe. I've seen lists like that. Still, the question is, how do you find the time to fit this in? You've got so much else going on. You want to have fun with your friends. You want to keep things up with your extracurriculars and your grades and your school stuff. You also have a summer job. So what are some ways that you made the time to learn 2,000 or 3,000 words? Maybe some of those strategies that you used could help some of our listeners out there who don't want to learn all those thousands really nail those couple hundred that matter the most.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you on that point. If there's a core of 500 words or so that are the most important to learn that show up a lot. And beyond that, you kind of get diminishing returns. But it's still, like you say, a lot to learn. And there's a lot of work to do for the test. So start early. I would say that's something I did. I usually recommend starting the summer before junior year, starting SAT or ACT prep. Give yourself a lot of time. It's less stressful. You'll get more done. You'll do better. And in addition to giving yourself a lot of time, really break up what you're doing into manageable chunks. So you want to have a little bit of work that you do each week. And you want to do that over a number of weeks, over a number of months normally. And that also leaves you the time to take the test more than once, which is really important since most colleges take your highest scores. So it's usually a good idea to take it more than once. Start early. I can't stress that enough. When I was in high school applying to colleges, it was kind of crazy. I'm from Florida, and we had a hurricane hit our town. Like as I was applying, as I was studying for the SAT. Yeah, we had to leave. Then there was no power for 2 weeks. Yeah, and then it happened again. We had a second hurricane. So fortunately, I was able to submit everything on time, SAT, but it was kind of close. Now most people won't have a hurricane, hopefully not, hit their town, while they're applying, but stuff happens, and even without stuff happening, there's just so much to do for college applications that's really important to start early, and just do a little bit, each week and make it manageable that way.
No, definitely. Planning ahead is something that we hear a lot on College Admissions Toolbox, as we're talking with various folks in test prep and college admissions. But at the same time, though, what happens, to our listeners who didn't start early? What happens to our listeners where it's already senior year, got to take the SAT that last time, get that top score, only got, a couple weeks, a month. What can students do in that final crunch time to really maximize their scores? Can you give us an example of maybe a student that you encountered who kind of didn't plan ahead and took more of a last-minute approach? How did you help this student?
Sure. So what I do is I think it's best to focus on a kind of a limited amount of material. So let's say you have 1 month before the test. You might say, okay, I'm going to take 10 practice tests within that month, and then I'll be ready for the test. I've seen people try to do this, and it's usually not the best way to go about it. I think it's really good to just say, okay, I have 4 weeks. I'm going to take maybe 2 practice tests, something manageable, take those tests, and then really review what you've learned. So kind of focus on a limited amount of material, mainly real practice tests, some math or grammar you need to supplement those tests, but then really learn it, really make sure that you remember everything that you've learned. I think it's always better to spend more time reviewing material than just taking new tests. So that would be my advice. Don't try and go too crazy. Figure out what's a amount of work that's reasonable to do in that time period, and then do that work and really learn from that work. Because, these tests are so repetitive, you can get a lot from doing 2 tests. You don't necessarily need to do 10 tests.
Definitely. Better to do a couple of exams and review them in detail and really learn from those mistakes. Don't just do 10 practice tests, count up your scores. It's not just running through exam after exam. It's really learning from those mistakes, lessons learned that you carry forward to the next experience. Now, speaking of lessons learned, one thing we really love to hear on College Admissions Toolbox are stories. Could you take us to the worst moment that you've seen or experienced in the college admissions or test prep process and share with us the lessons that you've learned from that?
Sure. So it'd be really easy actually to talk about myself. And I can tell you about my college essay experience. That
Absolutely.
was kind of the low point of my college applications. I had a lot of trouble with the essay, as a lot of students do. I wrote an essay that I thought was great at first. It talked about all my interests, how I wanted to study certain, writers, certain historical periods. So I thought it was great. I showed it to a number of people, and it was a terrible essay. And it was a terrible essay because it didn't really say anything about me. I was basically just listing a lot of things I was interested in. And I was interested in them, and I liked them and did go on to study them. But in the essay, you really want to get across something that's personal, that's authentic, that reflects you as a person. I think there's a lot of pressure with the essay to sound completely amazing. You want to write about how you did some amazing scientific research. All of that is going to show up in the application, in your resume, your extracurriculars. But the essay, you really want to use that as a space to get across your own personal attributes. And this essay just wasn't doing that. So I kind of learned my lesson. And then it was really tough to think of what would be, what I could do at that point. I was stuck. And so I spent a lot of time reflecting, and I ended up deciding to write about the school bus. It was a 180 from the first essay, but it was a totally mundane thing, the school bus. But I had ridden the same bus for 10 years, and I had the same bus driver. Yeah, this great bus. A long time. And it was a long trip. It was like an hour to school. So here's like 2 hours a day, every day. So I kind of, a large part of my childhood growing up did take place on this bus with a lot of the same people. And so it was a great topic for the essay because I had developed friendships on the bus, and I had reflected on the bus and done a lot of schoolwork on the bus. And, at this point, I don't recall exactly what I wrote, but I was able to turn it into something very authentic, very personable. And so I think it just goes to show that, when you're trying to find a topic for the essay, don't kind of overlook those little more potentially mundane day-to-day things, because you might find that they can be, a starting point for actually writing something very personal and authentic that colleges are looking for.
Totally, Robert. I couldn't agree more. So many times, it's those ordinary, mundane topics that can really give some insight into who you are and ultimately result in the best essay. So you've really got to pick something that really shows you as a person, and even better in this instance, really speaks to your personal development. 10 years on this school bus, a couple hours a day. My God, like this bus driver saw you grow up practically.
That's right. That's right.
It's really something. That's a great story. It's really, it's really awesome to hear that you kind of had the courage to scrap your original essay. And the original essay you said it was on a research-oriented topic?
I think I was just listing all of my academic or
the laundry list.
Laundry list, exactly.
Yeah,
to sound impressive. Right.
Yeah. No, you got to focus on that specific experience, that moment in time. That's so much more valuable and really showing them who you are. So definitely a great teachable moment there, Robert. Thanks so much for sharing that. I want to shift gears now, moving to my favorite part of the interview, which is the lightning round.
Great.
Where I'm going to ask you some rapid-fire questions, and you give me some rapid-fire responses. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. What's your number one piece of advice for the college admissions process?
So use the college admissions process as a way to learn about yourself. Yes, use it to get into a college you want to get into, definitely, but also take it, it's an opportunity to learn about what you're interested in, who you are, and reflect on you as a person. That's very valuable.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, figuring out where you want to spend the next 4 years really requires some reflection. So definitely take that time. Look into the schools in detail. So important. Could you share with us one habit that you believe contributes to college admissions success?
Starting early in the process, like I've said, is really important. It will make the process, you'll do everything better, and it will also be much less stressful and more manageable.
That is so true. What is one online college admissions resource that you absolutely love?
I really love what Khan Academy has done recently.
Yeah.
So they've started a college admissions series, and they have videos with admissions officers at schools. It goes into all aspects of the process. I think that's a really good resource.
Oh, it's a great one. We'll link to it in the show notes. I already linked to it on the college admissions subreddit. It's super valuable. Khan Academy is great in so many ways, and I'm glad they've done some college admissions stuff too. What's one book that you believe no college applicant should be without?
So as an SAT and ACT tutor, I'm going to have to say the official SAT study guide or the real ACT prep guide.
Yep, those actual exams, so important. Nothing like getting it straight from the source themselves. So thanks so much, Robert. What are you up to these days?
So in addition to doing the SAT and ACT tutoring, I'm really growing my blog, the SAT ACT blog, and it's a totally free resource filled with SAT and ACT lessons, strategies, advice, and it's just getting bigger and more comprehensive as time goes on, which I'm really excited about.
That's incredible, Robert. And give us the website URL just so people can look it up.
Sure. So you can go to worldwideweb.thesatactblog.com.
Thesatactblog.com. Definitely check it out. We'll link to it in the show notes. Also sounds like a great resource. Everyone should look into it. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. This has been really great.
Awesome, Robert. Take care.
All right. You too. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to College Admissions Toolbox. Head over to www.collegeadmissionstoolbox.com to get more free tools and resources that will help you get into the colleges of your dreams.